Welcome to Terrific Talk. My name is Tom Anderson. Tom Anderson.
Back, the gate gone. Back, gone. Tom
Anderson.
Great cash, homie.
I feel ready to go another 9 innings.
Touchdown.
I feel ready to go another 9 innings.
Touchdown.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Down goes crazy.
Terrific Talk Podcast. Welcome back, Terrific Talk Podcast.
Here comes the hoe.
I'm your host, Tom Anderson.
First, behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
Welcome to Terrific Talk. I'm Tom Anderson. Got an awesome podcast for you today. Really excited about this one. My guest today is Phil Elder, but most of you probably know him better as J.E. Skeets. He, of course, is the host of The Starters on NBA TV. Now, The Starters, which used to be the Basketball Jones podcast, it's one of the best sports shows around. You've got 4 guys now, 4 fans of the NBA, diehard fans just like you and me, and they're talking hoops. It's awesome. It's a fun show. Really excited to have Skeets on with me right now, so let's bring him in. Skeets, welcome to Terrific Talk.
Hey, how's it going? I was going to say, unless my mom or grandma's listening, the Phil Elder's going to throw everyone for a loop today. So feel free to keep with the Skeets. How's it going, though?
Good. Well, let's ask about that. Where did the name J.E. Skeets come from? Was it I think I read it was a bar or something. What's the story behind that?
I mean, I'm obviously asked that a lot, and I wish I had a really cool, funny story to go with it, but the lame story is really when I started, before we started the podcast, even I decided I was going to start sort of just a normal sort of blog, which then sort of morphed into a sports blog or NBA blog, and I was doing it at my day job, and I was, helping recruit and place physicians and nurses and stuff like that, and I was just worried. I knew I was going to be writing while I was at work, so I was like, better not use my real name in case my boss Googles my name or something like that and sees that I'm writing. So I was, the J.E. Skeets was just, I had remembered it came up at a cottage weekend, where obviously too many beers had been consumed and someone thought it was funny, and I'm sure other things were consumed. And anyway, it just sort of popped in my head, so I just went with that. And then, here I am sort of being called that day in and day out at work, which is a little weird. But it's not the greatest of stories, unfortunately.
That's an awesome story. So you're a big Toronto Raptors fan. I'm from Jersey. I'm a big Nets fan. That was a pretty awesome series our teams played. Are you excited about the future of the Raptors and the T-Dot?
Yeah, definitely excited. I was a little disappointed. I had picked the Raps to upset your Nets there.
Yep.
Or upset. I mean, I guess it would have been an upset, but it was really the Raps for the 3 seed. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
But, it's funny, though. We obviously moved down to Atlanta to do the show, now The Starters, and of course the year we leave Toronto is the year that the Raptors are actually talented and worth watching night in and night out and have a bunch of likable players. It's just like Murphy's Law.
Of course.
Cass and I, for sure, we've had season tickets for years and years and years, seeing a lot of bad basketball. But I'm pretty pumped. And it does look like they actually have a bit of a blueprint here for a bit of a decent future, and hopefully it isn't just 1 year and out type of deal.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Kyle Lowry. What do you make of Drake and the whole Drake phenomenon? I remember one of the pictures during the series. He looked like he was an assistant coach. I mean, he's on the bench. It was amazing. What do you make of Drake?
It was pretty funny at first with the whole global ambassador thing, but there's no doubt that he brought a lot more attention to the team, and he's really brilliant. I mean, I don't know how much credit you can give the guy who knows what he's actually coming up with and putting into practice, but a lot of the stuff around the team, like the We the North and just the merchandise and the Drake night, it's well done. Whether or not you like Drake or not, and his music is a whole other thing, but the guy knows how to sell something and make things cooler. Because the raps to the American public were definitely not cool, and no one really cared, and even probably don't even continue to care all that much. But there's no doubt that it got them noticed a lot more, and it seemed to help the fan base in Toronto. I mean, those crowds were crazy outside the arena.
They're amazing.
Hats off to him. Again, I don't know how much he was involved in that, but you would think, timing-wise, it sure looks like he had something to do with that stuff. So it's if it brings more attention to the team, and it makes the team sort of obviously sort of feel better because they feel more important and more people are watching, and then that means more people want to come play for Toronto, then there's no way you can knock the success that it ends up having, for sure.
So I'm interested in hearing, what do you think drew you to broadcasting and writing and podcasting, this whole kind of field? What interested you about it?
That's a tough question. I after high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, like most people, so I decided not really to rush to university or college. I took a year off. I traveled. First off, I worked at factory jobs to make money to travel, but I did that. And then sort of after that, I had always liked commercials and trying to tell a quick story within commercials and stuff like that. I thought I was interested in at least, so I applied to radio and television at a school in Toronto, Ryerson University, and thankfully got in and sort of went from there. It was sort of first year was audio-based, second year became more television, and then you just start meeting people, of course, and finding out who you click with and writing with, and then a couple of the guys I still continue to do the show with, JD and Mario, and then Pass was a little bit later there at university, but was into it, and I liked the whole creative process of coming up with something, and then after school, we just sort of didn't know, I knew I didn't really want to be like a lackey on set where I was, running chords or getting coffee. I didn't want to do that. I know that most people just sort of get into it. That's sort of how you got to do it. But we sort of just looked at it like, well, what do we want to do? Why don't we just make our own thing? Because we're going to sort of figure it out. So the idea was just sort of podcasting. It was, fairly brand new at the time. Not a lot of people really knew what it was. And so JD, Tass and myself at that time, just the three of us sort of just figured it out. I mean, it really just helped that JD was, he was older than us at the same school, but later he worked in sound engineering and all that, sound production. So he sort of had a really good grasp of how to make something at least sound good, and then whether or not we would be saying anything worthwhile was a whole different story. But it at least sort of right out of the gates, our show, I would say, was sort of leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of just sort of podcasts, and just in terms of how it sounded, because JD sort of had that knowledge base. But yeah, and from there it was sort of just deciding what we wanted to talk about. And, we were going to do sort of a general sports show, and then we were sort of like, maybe that's too broad. Should we sort of get more of a niche? And then, we were like, well, what do we both really like, Tass and I? And sort of just came to the conclusion that we were both passionate basketball fans, and obviously we were rap fans, so just went from there.
You mentioned you met Tass at Ryerson in Toronto. What was your first impression of him?
It was weird, because the way it was set up, it was pretty hands-on, program, so you were in somewhat smaller groups, but whatever sort of path you were in or whatever class you were in, you were working with those people more involved. And Tass was, I can't remember if he was with Matty O or not, but anyway, I wasn't really with Tass at the time, so I only met him sort of later on, and that was sort of folding into friends and stuff like that, and the classes sort of merged together.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to think, what I thought of him the first time I met him. I mean, I don't even really specifically remember where I met him. I don't know if it must have been just at school, but he was obviously, the one thing is he was a huge sports fan.
Yeah.
And, was trying to get experience in that field, and probably, to be honest, he was way more passionate about, he probably knew way before I did, because I don't even still know sometimes, but he was probably knowing that I want to get into sports television or sports broadcasting. He sort of, I think, was way more set on that. So he sort of had that direction in his mind.
Yeah.
And so that, and I'm a huge sports fan, so that was an easy thing to talk about and sort of bond over. And then he's a quiet guy at first, but he's hilariously weird. I always say, well, then I met Lee Ellis, but that's one of the weirdest people I know in his own way. So that was a bond as well.
So you mentioned that you guys were one of the earlier ones to the whole podcasting. You mentioned the sound. What do you think are some of the other keys to, making a good podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does definitely help if it just sounds great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's beneficial. It's not the end-all of everything, but it definitely helps people sort of, consume it better. Other things were a huge thing for us was consistency. I think that is a massive thing. It's something we talked about before when we've sort of talked to people about sort of maybe why we thought we got successful. Consistency is huge. So whether we started it was like once every 2 weeks, and then we decided it was once every week, and then it was once a day. That is huge, and like it's one thing to say that, but then it's another to follow that.
Yeah.
And like if you're saying you're daily, then you should really, really be as close as possible to being daily, because you'll really become a habit for people. And I think that's a big part of our show, like sort of the day in, day out, where we hope at times you feel like, oh, I forgot, I haven't listened to the Jones yet, or when it was the Jones or now the Starters. It's like, oh yeah, that's sort of what I do. I do that at X time,
Yep.
while I'm eating breakfast or while I'm in the car driving home. People, and that's the best thing about the podcast, like people just consume it whenever they want. So
Exactly.
consistency is huge. I mean, other ones are obvious, but like we were passionate about it.
Yep.
And that comes through. You're always going to be more inclined to listen to someone when they're just passionate about it. Whether or not you agree with them half the time, it's you like to hear that, oh, they actually care, because in theory you're caring about what they're talking about if you're downloading a podcast. So that was a big thing too. But yeah, I mean there are other things, but those were the three benchmarks we were always trying to hit.
I'm just wondering, what are some of the best ways you think are to market the podcast? Because you guys started, before Twitter and everything. What did you guys do to get it out to the people?
It was weird. Like we obviously had like blogs and stuff that we were posting it to, and I think we obviously got lucky. I mean, there's no doubt we got lucky. At the time we started doing the show, is when the NBA blogosphere was starting to catch on, sports blogosphere in general, and just sort of that was becoming more and more popular. And so a big part of it was like building connections within that whole sports blogosphere. So, I mean, we would frequently have on like the specific team bloggers, like the writers. So if we were going to be doing playoff previews, we'd make sure to have the Cavs guy on to battle the Wizards guy, or not battle even, but just talk to those experts on their teams. And then when you do that, they would, of course, have other people on, they would post it to their site, so you've got other people, basketball fans, clicking over and saying, oh, hey, what's this? Okay, maybe they're not talking about my team all the time, but, I like the NBA or whatever, I'll give it this a go. So that was a big thing, like connections just within the sports blogosphere, and it helped, like, Will Leach was early on, with Dexter there, and then even to Jamie Mottram when he was at Fan House way back, and then over to Yahoo. I mean, that helped us tremendously to help build an audience. And then, really it was also just being on iTunes and someone in Japan searching for an NBA show, and there wasn't a whole ton, I assume, and there definitely was no one doing daily. So if you wanted a daily NBA show and you searched for that, you were getting us, and probably just us.
So you guys are the place to go. Okay, so can you take me through like an average day for you, let's say working like on today's show from start to finish? What's your routine? How do you build the show?
Yeah, it's a little different than the regular season, but the playoffs right now, as it is, I get up about 6 or 7. A lot of us on the show are obviously massive readers. We try and consume, of course, our favorite NBA writers and your heavy hitters like Woj and all those guys.
Yep.
But then, even down into, of course, not that they're smaller, they're smaller on scale, but they're just as amazing. All the big bloggers for their specific teams and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Consume as much as you can, so start reading. You're obviously formulating your thoughts from the night before on the game. We all get into the office about, I would say, in the playoffs, 8:30 or 9 in the morning.
Okay.
We all sit down. We start doing it just like you would any sort of production. Start building the show. Okay, A block. Well, we know it's going to be the game talk from the night before. Well, what specifically? Because it's what's different with the podcast when we were just a podcast and now really being a TV show is like there's so much more work that has to go into building the visual for what you want to talk about.
Right.
So if we want to talk about, look at this horrible pick and roll defense, it's a little easier when we just sit on a podcast and we just talk about it and we try and create that image as much as possible. But now, and we've